Bad
Nice.
idea.
We're recording. Let's do a video recording here. How do I turn
my
that
God.
off? What's up, guys? How do I turn this shit off?
Books.
I'll just put my finger over it. There you go.
Books.
What's up?
It's happening, man.
I
Yeah.
think I don't.
It's done.
I don't know. I haven't.
It's done.
Yeah.
Emmer was trying to suggest to me earlier that that the early games was the best possible start that Chris could have had because your guys were underperforming on steals. And I was like, dude, it can't be the best it can't be the best start that he could have when he has Eric Bledsoe just like burning a start on his utility. And he had 3 steals with Hazonia on his bench.
Yeah, the Hazonia start was last minute. Yeah.
There's no path here.
It would require a lot of made shots and a lot of steals. But I think it's pretty much a done deal.
Woohoo!
I know, man.
Long time coming.
It's been a long wait.
The last year was 2004.
Oh, I was
I
gonna.
think it
Oh
was-
shit! I can pull some. Lusk, are we recording it?
Yes.
Oh,
We record everything, if only for Peskin's benefit.
All right, hold on. So We're gonna. So we're recording. So I can talk.
Yes.
I've got a list. I'm gonna. Okay. We can start. I've got some goodies planned.
All right.
Should we start?
Yes.
Is there anything we need to talk about before we start?
I don't think so.
All right. Oh, what number pod is this?
Dude, we haven't had many this year. It's like episode 4.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Hold on. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute. I don't want to get it wrong.
how was dinner
I'm
last?
sick of getting it wrong.
It was good. I already got 3 cocktails deep, and I just poured a fresh glass of Bullet. So,
How was the WCL dogs?
I'll try and keep it brief, but I'll give you guys a quick update.
Wait. Let's save it for the show. Talk about something that's not on the agenda.
I was hoping to spare everyone else their the misery here.
I'll keep it brief.
I told Horn that he should open the pod as "Welcome to the WCL Pod, Season 1, Episode 1," but he wasn't up for it.
No, I really wasn't. What are we microwaving?
Some hot tea. That's.
I thought it was gonna be broccoli and chicken like the good old days.
I was gonna make myself a Scotty B for 3 sandwich, but didn't have enough apples.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 5 of the Collier Pod. I'm your host, David Horn, owner of the 5th place at the moment, Jabberwocks, hoping to hold on to 5th. With me are Brian Lesky, owner of the 4th place, Dirty Dog Nation. Hello, Brian. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's your pod, man. Like you're. Thank you for having me. And with us as well, owner of the currently as of 10:19 Eastern Standard Time. Is it Eastern Standard? Are we in Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time? Brian.
I don't know. I don't live in the East Coast.
Are we on Central Daylight or Central Saving?
Central Savings Time.
No, we're on Daylight Time. 10:19 Eastern Daylight Time. Owner of the 1st place, Scotty B for 3. Scott Bookbinder, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it is custom in our league on the last night of the season to have onto the pod the one or more managers who we think have a shot at winning the UFBL championship that night. Tonight, we knew we were going to have you on. You've got a nice 4-point lead going into tonight in 1st place. And we invited Chris to come on as well, but he said he couldn't because he had to go to the theater.
He wasn't going to throw away his shot.
Books, would you ever go to the theater with your wife on a night that you might win the UFBL championship?
Like Jones, I did not block my calendar for this date, so I just happened to be lucky that I was available with no plans. But I don't think I would throw away a ticket to a night out at Hamilton, so I don't blame Jones at all. And but I just happened to be available.
Lusky, where were you? Where did you spend the night that you won your UFBL championship, your recent UFBL championship?
Wasn't I on a podcast with you all?
Yeah, but you were home. You were home. You had
Yeah,
blocked it off. You
Whenever I pod, I
you
buckled
had
down.
blocked it off. Yeah.
I'm in the playroom surrounded by like markers that don't have their caps on them, and like broken helicopters. This is my gym right here.
Well, we're very excited to be back for the first time since like mid-season, and to get into a whole bunch of stuff. So let's start with the race itself. Books, why don't you walk us through your day? Like, where were you pre-tip in terms of roster management?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, Horn, you spelled it out on the Slack channel earlier today, but I had two categories that really mattered: field goal percentage and steals. And fortunately, the way the load management rests happened, I was able to field a whole 10. I slotted guys like Boban and Greg Monroe and Tyler Zeller, names that just don't belong on a first place roster at any point in any time, but they came through with some much needed field goal help. And I was just hoping to, if I locked that category down and maybe chipped in a few steals, then I would hold the lead. But, it was definitely a head start, but it wasn't out of the realm of possibility for Jones to take it. So I needed to use all 10 of those spots.
Lusky, what do you think of some of the names that are on like Scott's roster right now from the perspective? Like, there's this idea that, the rosters by the end are just these like super teams. Like Scott and Chris's teams do not look like super teams to me.
Yeah, I'm checking it out. Well, I mean,
like they are, but the guys who are the superstars aren't playing in these games.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I always try to remind myself that at the end things fall apart. But you never really, it's based on on what's going on in the actual NBA. You never really know how quickly things are going to fall apart. I feel like in years past, it's been like 2 or 3 days where you couldn't count on anything. But this year, it's really like it came up until the very last minute because things were close in both conferences in terms of playoff seeding.
I mean, we should just like read this for posterity. Like the UFL
Boban, Marjanovic.
Yeah, dude, like Rab,
Cornet,
Boban, yeah, Sterling
Brown,
Sterling Brown. These guys are starting on the last night for the champion. So like now, part of it though is like Scott, you shed a lot of skin like right at the end, right? You dumped like 5 or 6, top 30 guys in the last like 3 days, right? Scott,
Horn, do you hear Scott?
Sorry, I'm going to be going on and off mute because I have a bad cough, so bear with me, everyone. I'll try not to do that again. So I've been starting guys like Ray Spalding and Christian Woods like a case. Other dudes on my team for a little while. Ivan Robb. I think what happened is I was always catching up games and I never caught up in time. And I didn't really until a few weeks ago try to like start mapping out the games and realizing how many days off I'd have. And so I needed some of these guys just to make up games and catch up.
Do you think that like during the trading season, why did you not account for this earlier?
I think it's two things. Well, one, I just didn't make time out of my day to actually like schedule it all out. But I think honestly what happened is coming into this year, I was not a fan of the reduced roster size from 16 to 14. I actually found it really interesting and really challenging. I always like to lay low in games and then try to pick it up at the end. And that's a strategy that is really dicey right now with how many rest games people have. And so I needed to, frankly, I just fell too far behind too fast and I waited too long to make my moves. And so I ended up in a position where I had some really crappy games that I needed to fill in at the end. And that's probably not the right way to go.
Let's talk about, so we reserved a segment on this pod to talk about WCL because it has been a topic of interest to at least one member of this group. But this is actually a good segue because Lusk, you've told me a little bit, but like explain for those who don't know what like the last week of WCL looks like in terms of like trading activity.
Well, this year has been particularly wild. Basically, it's head to head, myself and another manager in the league, and both of us are basically vying to be the first 3-time champion ever in WCL.
But hold on, I want to interrupt you. I want to preempt like Amish saying after he hears this that he turned it off as soon as he heard the WCL content. Go ahead, Lusk.
Well, all I would say is so
Strike
WCL
the
has,
orchestra.
WCL has no trade deadline. It has a $20 cash limit, and so like a single dollar is perceived to be more valuable just because dollars aren't thrown around as readily. And so what happens is like, like last night I made a move to because I was trying to get Joe Ingles onto a competitor's team so that he could catch my rival in assists. I ate the contract, the bad contract of Will Barton, which was $21, so that I could get him to take Ingles, and he also gave me $3, which I then turned around and immediately tried to spend to acquire players that I could send to another manager who was trying to catch my rival in points. So there's just like categorical gamesmanship at the very last minute.
Right. And Books, does all of this sound appealing to you from the perspective, like, so you're instead of making trades like that, you're just scraping the wire for like these dudes who are not very fun. They're kind of interesting as from a certain perspective, but you're still sort of playing with trash at the end.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting to go through.
You got to fight for that inch.
To go through, I would tell you, I spent like an hour the last several nights stacking up 16 players deep of waiver wire pickups because I had so many games to make up, and I know other people were going to be claiming guys. I was claiming like Walter Lemon and losing out to him, and like all these guys you've never heard of. And so to add on another layer of like watching Jones try to help my competitors pass me, it just I think I'm good cutting it off. I mean, it's a long grind, and that just sounds like that sounds miserable.
I think all of that's fair. So, Lusk, you're done. It's not happening for you tonight.
I'll give you the quick. I mean, there's the path is getting narrower and narrower. So the easiest path to victory for me at this point, or at least a tie for the win, is if let's just say this: if Nikola Jokic, Gorgie Dieng, and Enes Kanter, three of the best field goal players in the league, combined to shoot like 0 for 40, then I would tie for the win. Or if in like the final, it already ended. Damn. Okay, so that's my only path at this point. There was when this pod first started, there was a path where my opponent could be caught in two other categories, points and assists, which would have also given me the tie. Neither of which happened. So it's done. I finished in second. And the one point, I don't want to talk about WCL too much, but the one thing I do want to say is, and this is more, I think, ubiquitous, but between WCL and UAFBL, at the end of this year, I will have played 35 total seasons between those two leagues. And this will be the second time ever that I finished in second place. The only other time that I finished in second place was in UAFBL year one, and 2002, but before it was a keeper league. And I've been kind of grappling with how I'm going to feel about this, and I think I'm going to be happy that I went all in and fought to the last minute. But obviously, right now, it doesn't feel great.
So speaking of fantasy league history, if Scott wins tonight, this is going to be the first championship since, what did we decide? 2004?
Yeah, 2004, which was the last year before we switched to being a keeper league.
Okay, so 2004. Hold on. Okay, so I'm going to go to each of you in turn. You're going to pick a month. Scott, pick a month from 2004.
November.
In November 2004, I'm gonna give you a fact per month from 2004. You ready, Lusk?
Mm-hmm.
This is just to show how bad I've been for 15 years in purgatory.
Hold on. I'm gonna find a good one.
Well, I for one had just graduated from Michigan.
Oh man, there's so many options here. November 23rd, 2004. World of Warcraft multiplayer online role-playing video game released. World's most subscribed game. Scott, were you playing World of Warcraft back in 2004?
I wasn't. I was clearly just focused on UAFBL. That was pretty much my life at the time.
Lusk, were you a World of Warcraft guy?
No, never played it.
Who do you think the World of Warcraft players are in UFBL?
I have no idea. Peskin, maybe.
Peskin and Weeg, that would be my guess.
Doesn't that seem like a Phil thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
All right.
Phil,
He's not in the UFBL.
Phil's not in UFBL. All right.
Every podcast turns into a Phil.
So books. So all right. So you did. You started. You made your choices tonight. The games started. You had all the early games, right? And Chris has all the late games.
Yeah.
How did that concern you? Did you have a moment of like, oh, like it could be one of those like awful nights where the whole thing unravels?
Yeah, I mean, if I had a terrible field goal night and no steals, then there was a scenario. So I mean, I didn't overthink it though. I wasn't too concerned about the schedule. I literally checked at 6:30 and was like, "What time are the games tonight?"
This motherfucker just benched Jokic, Dieng, and Cantor and Harrell. Sorry.
We're trying to limit that WCL content.
Okay,
on the podcast.
sorry.
I like having the flexibility in the race to make spot benches or spot starts for the late games, depending on how things break early. Like you were in a position.
Our rosters are so thin now. There's like there's no optionality
right.
for anyone really. Yeah,
Right. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I think that's why. So I ended up short on games this year. I think this is the first time in probably a decade that I have not maxed out my games played, unless it was like a very intentional, targeted decision at the end. And I think the reason is because I misestimated or underestimated the impact of the short bench.
It's the silly season in the NBA. Nobody plays any more freaking games.
Right. It's like I had this like innate. Well, Dwayne Wade had a triple double. Fun. I had this like innate sense of like what I needed when I needed to start putting my foot on the gas. But that was calibrated to a 16 team or 16 person roster.
Yeah, it's very different.
And so Lusk, what is your view on the shortened rosters?
I didn't feel like it was all that impactful, except for maybe in the arms race when people were like slushing players around. There wasn't like as much fodder, and so generally the player their arms race this year was I felt like particularly elongated because we had 5 managers who had stayed in it for a pretty substantial amount of time. And so for that reason, when like the second and third waves of sellers came to be, it was like the players you were getting back were arguably, quality players. So I noticed that, and I think that had to do with the shortened rosters. There wasn't as much cruft that you could just slush around.
Cruft? Not of cruft?
Yeah.
Huh. Books, what did you think of Magic Johnson's thing yesterday?
I don't know why he couldn't wait 2 days. What was the deal with last night? It was crazy.
Was last night their last game? They didn't play tonight, right?
Yeah, but there was like Dirk and Wade's last game. And
well, I don't think Magic was like worried about whether he was going to like rain on the fucking Dirk Nowitzki going away game.
I know, but he should have. And it was clearly spontaneous. He had spent like hours in meetings with Jeannie Buss and LeBron the days before. Something felt like there was something that triggered it. I don't know. It was strange.
Horn, cruft, I didn't realize this, but it's an industry term for my industry. It means badly designed, unnecessary, complicated, or unwanted code or software. So you remove all unnecessary cruft from Word documents saved as HTML.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
in a sense,
I felt
in a-
you judging me. I felt
in a
you
sense-
judging me for my vocabulary, and I wanted
In
to
a
make
se-
sure.
in a sense, in a fantasy league in the digital age, they are all just cruff.
Yep, they are cruft.
You're just moving a bunch of code back and forth.
Shakar Sampson. Definition of cruft. Walter Lemon.
Dude, I like Jakar. I think he's going to be good.
In the G League.
Dude, Frazier had 13 assists tonight. I just want you to know that Frazier had 13 assists.
I know. I didn't need those assists. I needed him to go 100 for 100 field.
Books, how much of Lusky's WCL bullshit have you had to endure?
It's pretty unbearable. I don't know why he thinks I actually like. It's not even that I don't care, but I have no.
Oh shit!
What's going on where I can give him helpful advice.
Guys, I forgot. I do have one more path. So Connie just benched all of his players. If Willie Cauley-Stein and Monty Morris combine to go like 50 for 50 from the field, then I have a shot.
Wait, did you? I thought you only had one utility spot between those two.
No, I ended up shifting some stuff. When a lot of ins and outs happened. When Gobert went down, I was able to slot Cauley-Stein at center and move Monty into util.
What if the Collier Pod just became a podcast that was only about Lusky's WCL team? How long would people stay with it?
Don't they have an extra manager?
Let's talk about the Scotty B path to victory. Let's get to the good part.
Why don't you lead this part, Lusky?
Well, okay, all right. So there, you know.
Do you not like my pacing of tonight's pod?
I just think look, tonight is a celebration. It's a celebration of a team that has not won a championship in 14 fucking years, right? And a manager who has taken some time to learn.
It is true. Books, have you felt pressure to win?
Absolutely.
Because it's been very easy to make you the butt of UFBL jokes about the competition itself because of this period of coming up short.
Yeah, I've heard it for sure. That's one of the most I'm feeling relieved as much as I'm feeling happy.
Dude, you're gonna like UFBL so much more going forward.
Yeah, it really buys you another 14 years of
exactly. The grace period's very long. I thought it was 5 years, but it turns out it's more.
A lot more. Okay, can we talk about Scotty B's draft roster?
Yes, walk us through it. Let's make it a game. The game is you ask one of us to give it a letter grade based on either what we thought at the time or what we think now.
All right, hold on. Trying to get to it. This is not great, folks.
Peskin's gonna have his work cut out for him tonight.
No,
he doesn't
to make this one.
Yeah.
No, we're giving him a lot of good stuff.
Should I throw out? Do you want me to throw out?
No, I got it. Okay,
it's an embarrassment of riches.
Okay, so highest price player. I'm gonna go highest price to lowest price. So Paul George, $92.
One of us should say how we felt about it contemporaneously, and then the other one should say how we feel about it now. I'll say what I thought contemporaneously, and Book should say how he feels now. Contemporaneously, it was fine. It was a shrug. I think I think that Paul George was slightly diminished coming into this year, and so at the time it was like a fine but unremarkably, it wasn't like a special price. So because Paul George turned out to be, this was his best season ever, right, Scott?
Yeah, he ended up top 3. He ended up third best player in the league.
Yeah. I think it was a career year in every single category until he fell off at the end.
But he's still an amazing keeper. So Paul George, I mean, I remember, Horn, that you kept on like threatening because you came in with this stable of sick keepers. You kept on threatening, I'm just going to draft Paul George and then call it a day, right?
And you kept mocking me for
yeah,
it.
well, I kept on thinking to myself, like, that doesn't seem like the best strategy. Like, I'm not even sure Paul George is the guy I would spend my $100 on or whatever, right? And so I remember when Bookbinder made this room just thinking like, okay, last year was his contract year. He just got like fat and rich by deciding to re-sign with the with the Thunder, and I was like, I don't know that I want to like put a whole bunch of money in this dude. So I didn't love it at 92. I'll be honest.
I just figured with Melo's greedy, hands out of the way, that there would be more opportunities for him.
Dude, why you gotta call Melo names? And like he's out of the league. Like what? We're just gonna like shit on Melo forever.
I mean, you see the difference it made for that team and that offense.
How's Melo's legacy going to age, Scott?
He'll be a Hall of Famer. He'll be all right.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think this entire generation of NBA fans and writers and even players, just like I think he's really diminished at this stage relative to where he was even like 6 years ago.
It's been a rough few years for him, that's for sure.
I think those things really tarnish his legacy, such as it is, which wasn't that great to begin with.
Yeah. So, all right, second highest.
You don't want to debate Carmelo's Hall of Fame credentials.
I think. It's gonna be hard. If we're doing this quantitatively, I think that he is not a Hall of Famer.
And if we're doing it qualitatively, I also don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
I think it's the other way around. Quantitatively, his numbers are clearly Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well,
but he's never won anything.
What I mean is like quantitative beyond just that, in terms of like how successful he's been. I guess he has 0 championships, so that's a quantitative statistic.
I'm pulling up. I don't even think.
But remember, there is no NBA Hall of Fame. There's only a Basketball Hall of Fame, and he won the NCAA championship.
That's a good point. And he was awesome in the Olympics.
Yeah, so he's probably in just because basketball's stupid and doesn't have an NBA Hall of Fame.
I actually kind of like that. It's like your total contribution to the game, no matter where it happened.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Okay, so second highest price player was Kemba Walker, $71.
I mean, it's sort of the same as Paul George. At the time, it was like, that's a nice price for Kemba. It's fine. I don't think anyone was like, oh, wow, Scott just like pulled a rabbit out of his hat. Right? Do you remember differently?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like the price was about right. I remember like looking at this team and saying like, damn, like I had concerns just from a percentage standpoint that the two biggest shooters on the team, we'll get to another one later, but like I was like, wow, this team's got a whole bunch of like chuckers. And so I didn't think that they would really swing it in field goal. But one thing, and I don't know if we're going to talk about if we'll get to this, but one thing that I have a particular appreciation for from Bookbinder is I think you do a really stellar job at reconstructing your team around percentages. I recall a couple of years ago when you played the whole free throw game that you're just like mindful of how you can pivot your team. Even if you're bad at percentages one day, that if you time it correctly, you can come back.
Field goal for the entire season was like the focus of my team, for exactly the reason you described. And I thought Ayton and Whiteside and maybe a couple other guys could just keep me afloat until the end, or till the race.
Third highest priced player was Middleton, who I recall Middleton was like truly the last good player drafted. Right. There was no one left to spend your money on, and so isn't that right? He was pretty late call.
Yeah, I mean, Vooch was the last big that came up. Like both of those guys.
But he was called before Middleton.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I was literally Vooch came when I had very little money after him, and that was like the most agonizing bidding experience between Emmer and myself.
I gotta check this. I'm not buying that Middleton happened before Vooch.
What's the query here?
Like, which player was called first, Vucevic or Middleton?
Oh man, this podcast has got off the rails in the
All right. Anyway,
25
it doesn't really
seconds I
matter.
checked out of it.
How do you feel about Middleton for 70, Bookbinder?
He was maybe my worst pick because he kind of had a down year. He
He
started
really
off hot.
did. He was like circled and starred. I liked him in that range, and I thought he was going to be huge this year. And obviously his team was huge, but he wasn't what he was cracked up to be. I'll kind of race through the rest of these. So Vucevic was, I think, your best pick of the draft, right? At 54, he was amazing for you this year, top 10 player. Right?
Agreed. I mean, him and George are the reason I'm here.
I have a question. So of those guys, so it's George, Kemba, Vooch, and who's the fourth that we just talked about?
Middleton.
Of those four, how many were like circled and starred going in?
For me,
Yeah.
you know how I roll. I don't circle and star anyone, man.
So this was this a coupon clip? This
was like me in my purest form,
dude. You should use the occasion of this championship to rename your team the Coupon Clippers. That is the soul of your team. That is what brings you victory.
Peskin and I have had talks about it. It's a little bit of branding exercise, but like I think the last couple times I had a lot of cash coming in, I went against my ethos and was bidding on $150 players. Like I had that one year where I had CP3, Durant, and like one other guy, and then I just tried to scrap at the end. And I think I roll better when I just get a bunch of guys in this range, and rather than the stars and scrubs model. They worked for me this time.
So your next highest two price players. So Ayton isn't really worth a discussion. You were his top pick. He was an LSL player. LSL doesn't count, and it's obsolete, so not worth discussing. Rubio.
Can we talk about it? Wait, can we talk about Ayton for a minute?
Fine.
Fine. You don't want to?
No, it's obvious. I mean, okay. I mean, yes. Let's talk about him.
Books. You claimed to me at some point recently that but for trading for Russell Westbrook, you wouldn't have had Ayton, and but for having Ayton, you wouldn't have won this championship. Do you still believe that that's true?
I think that what happened 2 years ago, where I got a lot of assets, $30 in a couple slots, and I got Russ, allowed me to come in last year with more assets, where I turned that into more slots and more cash in Ayton for this year. And so, it's not causation, but there's definitely pieces of that decision 2 years ago. And I have some regrets about how that went down. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
No, we've already done like 4 podcasts on that topic.
Yeah. But Ayton was what I got for Russ last year.
I don't. So all of that's fine, except that you traded Russ on an expiring contract. So the value that you acquired the prior year, like you could have just gotten Russ that subsequent year or some other blue chip player for the same $100 and made that same trade for Ayton. So the trade that you made with Lusky the prior year did not enable your acquisition of Ayton the following year.
Yeah, I mean Russ's value has declined, but in theory, I would have. He was a $150 player on the market that year, not a $90 player, and I got $30 in cash, and I got 2 slots.
Right, but who else did you trade with Russ? You could have traded another player of that caliber with some other like less $40 guys or whoever you threw in with Russ. Whether you had $200 free after that or $250 free after that.
Yeah, I mean it's all hindsight, but I think you're clearly in a better position finishing in like 5th or 6th and mucking late, having more assets, mucking later, and getting better keepers than you are coming in with nothing and not having anything to really trade for. Or you have to do what Gabe did and just draft a bunch of guys who are upside guys. Like I think you coming in with assets, even if you're not going to win, allows you to propel yourself to the following year. And maybe I would have won this year without that trade. Who knows? But I mean, there's definitely traces of that roster and decision here. I don't think we need to go down that road again.
Really, I've got another 20 minutes prepared on this topic. Let's go on.
I was fine just brushing by that.
So your Chris Dunn keep was obviously amazing. Is he still on your team?
No, man. I got out of done. He's on Week's roster.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible. How did you do that? That's some wizardry right there.
That was. I noticed that.
Sorry, I jumped around. That one just stood out to me like, whoa. Okay, so I want to talk about Trae Young. That's what I want to talk about. So you dealt Trae Young before he became the best player in basketball, right?
I dealt him like 3 games into the run where he turned into Steph Curry. And at the time I was excited because I did not see a scenario where his combination of no defense, no field goals, and terrible turnovers would make him have any value. And he literally, from that point forward, transformed everything. And so I traded him at the worst time. Fortunately, Conley was really good for me, but I could have gotten a lot more for him.
Yeah, seriously, you could have gotten a ton for it. Is Mitch has him now, or Beal?
Yeah, Mitch just killed me in that deal.
Yeah, I mean hindsight, but yeah, that's wild. Because
I threw in $5 cash too.
Explosion for both Westbrook and Durant. So just to put it in perspective, what did you get for Trae? It wasn't much, right?
I got Mike Conley. I mean, Conley was
how helpful was he down the stretch for you?
Amazing. He was like a top 10 player the last month.
Really? I thought he was like hurt and shit.
Yeah, he shot 48%. They were telling him to just throw the ball, 20 shots a game, and he was outstanding. So I don't regret the trade, but there definitely was opportunity costs.
So okay, so you had a bunch of other picks. You had like Whiteside for 26, your SGA debacle at 26, but like
no, we should talk about those.
Well, no, okay, well, did you get a lot of use out of Whiteside and SGA?
Whiteside, from a field goal and rebounding and block perspective, was great. He's just a nightmare to own because you never know what Whiteside you're going to get. But he
and
for 20
Ultra hates him.
Yeah, but he was actually, he didn't pout too much when they benched him. But yeah, man, Whiteside, I was really like, of all the picks in the draft that I was most excited about coming out, it might have been Whiteside because he had a great preseason. He had his head on his shoulders. I was willing at the time to go to like 45 or 50 on him, and I got him for 28. And he he was shaky, but exactly what I needed from him to just keep me afloat in key categories.
All right, what about SGA? Did you get a lot of use out of him?
I mean, traded him for Klay Thompson.
Yeah, the funny story about him is that I topped him, Gabe drafted him, I let him go, I traded him back. I traded for him, and then Gabe traded back for him. That's how Gabe and I work when we both like the same player. And he's going to be amazing. I mean, he's expensive, but
you and Gabe have a lot. You and Gabe have a lot of these little like flirtations. Like there was another one of these recently, wasn't there?
Oh, I mean, we go back to like John Wall, Russell Westbrook, like Blake Griffin. We've always liked the same young dudes. And now that LSL's gone, we're going to just go head to head in the draft again. It's going to be great.
So wait, but SGA ultimately, he didn't net you Klay. It was the slot. That's all he really cared about, right?
Well, that was the differentiator. Was he had other slot offers, but he took mine because of SGA and Giles.
Oh, interesting. And SGA, did he actually play for you, or he was just a bench guy for the most part?
I spot started him, and he shot over 50% and was blocking shots for me. There was other injuries in the backcourt, so I utilized him, but he wasn't a regular. He just kind of was helping me stay up in games a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I ask is this is like, I'm looking at your squad, right? I think you came in pretty flush in cash, but between SGA, Harry Giles, you spent $20 on, Nerlens Noel, he spent $8 on, Schroeder was probably okay for you at $3.
Yeah.
If you get Giles, SGA, and Noel, I mean, this is like the crazy thing is that championship teams, every team wastes like $50 in the draft.
Rubio was a fucking waste. Rubio was pretty garbage.
Oh yeah, so it's like $80. They were just trash.
Yeah, I was struck by all that as well. I was struck by all that as well. Looking at your draft, that like you had a good draft. What's that? This
is not a championship team. Looking at it.
Yeah. So Lusky, in your view, starting where he started, which was like he coupon clipped perfectly in the top 4. Right.
Yeah, well, Vucevic and George and Kemba, that's kind of it, right? And then the two rooks ended up being pretty good for him.
Right. Yeah, and Whiteside was good coupon clipping.
I'm not even sure.
And Schroeder was decent, right? Books for a time.
Not really. He you could pick up. There's like a million. There's a million Dennis Schroeders on the waiver wire.
So who? I mean.
That's not true. That's not true.
How did you win?
That's unkind. That's unkind.
So Lusky,
In your
of,
words, how did you win?
Of all the years to come in with a team like this, there wasn't any huge DSJ or Lonzo trade coming in. Jones had the best team and didn't come in with assets. Like, it was a pretty balanced parity year. So all it took was like 2 decent assets, Trey and Ayton. And, I had 8 startable dudes, and then that was it this year.
This is a throwback.
Like
this is a throwback. This is like a 2004 style victory for Scotty B. This is like how you used to do it in UFL.
That's the only way I win is seriously.
All of the reform has basically been a plot by Scott to wind the clocks back to where UFL was a dinosaur,
where I can actually compete. This is very true.
Awesome. This is a great year, Bookbinder. Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
This fucking team sucks.
Scott, how are you going to celebrate?
Oh man, I'm my kids have actually, one of the best things is I've started to brainwash them, and so they're into it. I'm excited to wake up and tell them tomorrow. I'm excited to I'll probably put the trophies in their room if Mrs. Scotty B for 3 lets me. So that's that's a cool part of it.
Dude, we're gonna get your kids coming to take over the league, just like in that fucking story that you sent around.
Yeah, 37 years down. So maybe we're definitely on the way.
Who like that? Lusk, what did you think of that story? You didn't chime in.
I have to admit, I was in a work offsite all day and haven't had a chance to read through it, so I can't weigh in yet.
It was basically us, but they've been doing it since 1982.
Wow, we'll beat them. And
Scott,
and in 20 years, Keep Show is going to be back in the league. I'm calling it.
Books. How are we going to get Keep Show back in the league?
Oh man, he's 2 feet out the door. It's gonna be got a better shot with his daughter. If he was got a better shot with his daughter.
If he was 2 feet out the door, then we wouldn't hear from him. But we do a lot.
He loves
no less than we did when he was in the league. So
he's like the grandparent of the FPL, where he gets like all the benefits and none of the shit.
He's just a cranky old man. He's just a cranky old man on his front porch yelling at the kids playing in the yard.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
He'll be back. What's next on the agenda, Lusk?
Arms race.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the deals. I'm taking this over. Hold on,
right.
Pulling up the agenda. You did not do a great job, dude. I appreciate the effort.
Thomas Bryant and Clay.
Dude, those guys came in the trade. Let's talk through the trades. So the trades.
So that was the first trade. Thomas Bryant and Clay, both huge assets for Scotty B.
They were, but they came later. Let's start with so there was the.
Yeah, they were the first trades listed here. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, the first trades listed on that list, but they're not the first trades of the season.
For Scotty B?
In the arms race.
Oh.
Yeah, so before that there was the Jones trade that kind of kicked off the year for Miles Turner and Bob Cove, and then Weeg made the Wall trade.
Oh yeah, Lusk, what did you think about that trade? We talked about it a little on the only other pod we did this season, but that early move by Jones, it blew up. It turned out not to be great because Covington was hurt.
Yeah, I think I was wrong when we talked about it last time. But because you're right that there's benefit to adding these guys early, and Miles Turner was incredible this year. But I think as Bookbinder just said, I mean, Jones's biggest challenge this year, I think he had the best team coming in. He had a good draft, and I think that his big problem was that he didn't have the pieces at the end to really compete. All he really had was because he traded Sabonis early. All he had was cash and slots, which are in the pecking order of the arms race. Those are the lowest rung, and I think that hurt him.
So
How would you?
I think just to interject, and first off, I should have opened with just like a mad props to Jones and Weeg for like driving me to pure exhaustion and sickness the last 2 weeks with all of the everything that they did because Jones had literally no assets and he turned that into freaking Giannis, Booker, CP3, JaVale, Lou Will, Valanciunas. Like,
Didn't he get Harden? Did he get Harden? No, he got
no,
some other cool like CP3 and
he
somebody else.
pulled so much out of nothing at the end. So, yeah, he was totally behind the eight ball, and he literally came in he ended up with a super team out of without any keepers. So, yeah, I mean, I think Jones did a great job managing that.
So that was the first. That was the first big one. But we want to get to Scott's.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I want to know which of these, like, you made a lot of deals. I mean, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, you made like 9 deals.
Scott, rank them in terms of like most. Which one moved the needle the most to which one turned out to be the most insignificant, despite what you might have thought at the time.
Bielika,
I think I'm gonna.
That was the most insignificant deal.
No, but I think he knew that at the time. He knew that.
Bielitsa Gate was. Well, we don't need to talk about that.
There's no gate. There's no gate. It's not a scandal when you just
for me, it was a scandal. I'm gonna hijack this. What I want to do is I want to talk about like my thought process through this whole thing because I think that the biggest thing that people kept coming to me about is like, what the hell am I going to do with Ayton? Like, am I competing? What am I doing? Am I pulling a bookbinder and just like quitting?
Scott, can I just interrupt you for a minute?
Yeah,
I don't mind you going off. I don't mind you going off the agenda. Ordinarily, I would want to stick to the agenda, but because you're winning the UFBL championship tonight, I'm going to allow this digression.
Just one night. That's
for tonight.
the greatest thing about winning
just
is
for
that
tonight.
You'll allow me this opportunity.
So
I want to talk about the Ayton decision because every move I made throughout, including the Clay deal, was like reaction to where I was with Ayton. And the theme that you're going to hear throughout this is that Horn screwed me every step of the way on every deal I wanted to accomplish.
Wait, that's the theme? That's the theme of this?
That's the theme. So with Ayton, all I ever wanted for DeAndre Ayton was two dudes, a top 10 guy and a second guy. And the deal needed to stabilize field goal percentage because if I lose Ayton and don't get field goal percentage, I couldn't win. So that's all I wanted. And so like it started out with T-Mac and Mitch going after Curry and Capella or LeBron and Kyrie. And I felt like I was close, especially with Mitch. And then all of a sudden at the last minute, I'm like on a flight and I land and I check my phone and Horn has swooped in and stolen Kyrie. Split Fiddles came in and took Curry. And so, and he took LeBron. And so I'm like in a panic, the races started.
That was early. That was early, dude. That was all still pretty early. There were still a lot of pieces on the board at that point.
There were, and I knew there were 6 or 7 teams, and I could wait. There were like 6 or 7 players that if mucked by their manager, they would interest me. So that's when I pulled the Clay deal, and I started pinging Gabe, and I got Clay, and I was really excited to get Brian at the time, even though he was up and down, because I did start him for a while, even though he kind of faded until the end. So that was kind of the first strikeout, and Horn ruined that. And so 3 weeks later, I'm negotiating with Horn.
I ruined it from your perspective, but from my perspective, that was a very exciting time.
I'm glad. This next one is even worse. I'm actually going to pose you a query in a minute, but so Horn. The worst part of all of this was that throughout you were kind of in but you were considering going out. So at this point it's like late January and I think you did make it one genuine offer. So I think you were somewhat sincere, but we were talking about Giannis and I was talking to Amish with Durant and I felt I was getting close with both of you. But at the time you were asking me all these questions about my Durant negotiations. And so my question to you is, were you ultimately completed a deal with Amish for Durant? Were you just pretending and asking me questions about my deal to get information to help you with your Amish negotiations, or were you sincerely, thinking about mucking at the time, or just using that against me?
What do you think?
I think a little bit of both. The fact that you did make one offer, even though it was probably not like realistic, I would accept it. Makes me think that you would have considered mucking. But I also think you were trying to get a lot of information out of me to help you with your deal with Amish. I had no idea you were even considering negotiating with Amish because you represented to me that you were kind of on the way out.
Lusky, what do you think?
What say you?
I knew because I think I was head to head against you for Durant. And so I knew exactly what was going on, so it wasn't a mystery to me.
Yeah, dude. Like, I listen, Books. I was from the time I basically traded Mitchell for Kyrie. I was already basically conceding defeat on a certain level. Like, from that point until the end of the season, from that point until I traded all my guys that over the course of a week, about a month ago, I was always sort of just like playing it to sort of see where it went, had sort of resigned to the fact that it was a very unlikely season for me to succeed, but was going to keep kind of playing the game and seeing if I could catch fire. And sort of knew that Ayton was nice and Trae Young at that point was fine, but I wasn't going to bend over backwards for him. It was before he lit on fire. And it just it didn't seem worth it to go all in on mucking. So I was sort of keeping options open, but playing, competing.
So right from underneath me, Durant. So the two guys I was negotiating with both go off the market, and so that's when I'm in a panic, and that's when I throw out the offer to Mitch for Trae, and then I get much more aggressive with Horford because I know I'm behind on games, and so those two deals happen, and then I'm working Lusky trying to get him to muck. I'm working Beer to try to get AD, and Beer literally he said he was so anti-Ayton, he was like, I would have to pay him essentially to take Ayton. He thought Ayton was like a buyout risk. So Beer had no interest.
Oh yeah,
Lusky didn't.
Scott, what did you think of? So one of the narratives has been, I think, that Ayton, because of LSL, because he only had 2 years left, because of the potential that there'd be the LSL kicker, was just not that great of an asset. I'm curious how you responded to that argument when people were making it back to you.
You either love him or you don't really like. Lusky wasn't so high on Ayton.
Was anybody?
Beer wasn't. Oh my God, Weeg and Mitch were really high. Weeg, I think, is a surprise guest. I just saw someone popped into the line. He could tell you how he felt about Ayton, but Weeg was the other one. As I was going through this arms race, I was trying to get people to muck or open up about a deal, and I think Weeg at several times was considering mucking because he felt very highly about Ayton.
You were gonna muck? You were never gonna muck.
It was on my mind at one point, but
hey, it's Adam Weeg.
Welcome,
Scott. First you go on a digression without asking my permission, and then you totally step on my fucking feet by flagging that Weeg has joined before I've had a chance to introduce him.
Please, the floor is yours. I will.
You act as though you don't want to be. You act as though you don't want to be back on the Collier Pod.
He's got a taste of the title in his mouth right now.
I know. It's gone to my head already. What's up, Weeg?
Books. Finally, Books is going to run this league the way that he was supposed to as commissioner for the last 15 years.
Do you want to make an introduction?
Were you going to sell?
There was a point where I couldn't see a very good path forward, and my team was playing horrible across the board, and I was looking at next year going, I might be set up all right. And then my team went on a run for like 2 straight weeks. That was beautiful, and pretty much put that idea to bed. After that, I was not. I had a tiny tickle in the back of my mind the entire time of maybe if it came to it, I could muck the books and grab Ayton because it seemed like the prize to me, but I didn't.
How would you allocate in terms of like how serious you were percentage wise, like at that point, when Ayton was available? My guess would be that you were like 27%, like considering mucking, and otherwise we're totally in on competing.
Yeah, that's pretty good actually. I might call it 35, and then after those 2 weeks, it went down to 5, and then dwindled away. But I mean, what date was it that Ayton actually moved? He was there a long time, right?
February 25th.
Yeah. So I guess every day that went by was still on the table as a possibility if things worked out for me. But
which of Scott's deals like rattled your bones the most? Which one was like, oh shit, that's a baller move, and I'm in trouble?
Oh, that's a good question. What was his Kyrie deal? I remember.
Well, he took on Torian. I sent Torian. He basically got
$12.
He got Kirby for $12.
Yeah.
Torian Prince.
Why is that so funny?
What was the deal?
That's gonna be expensive, man.
That's awesome. It is going to be expensive, right? He basically paid like, what's Torian going to go for next year, Lusk?
20, 28, 30?
I don't think so.
No. I'm going to top him because I top the buyout commitment every year. I'm going to give it for $11.
Oh,
there we go.
20, dude. Torian's going to go single digits.
I said $11. $11.
Single digits.
Maybe single digits.
He's pretty fucking terrible. He's pretty terrible.
So that that was another really interesting trade. My decision at the time was Darren Collison, where I wouldn't have to take on a bad contract. And
See, I thought you. By the way, I thought you were bluffing. I thought what's that, Lusk?
Did he say 23 next year? I'm still grappling with it. Come on. All right, sorry.
I thought you were bluffing on Collison.
No, and I we can go on a sidetrack because I'm curious about UAFBL trade ethics because
oh boy. Weeg is the UAFBL ethicist, so he'll be well positioned to answer.
So indeed. I think I had told Beer I might go to 7, but I need a little more time. And then in that period, and I think he was talking to you, maybe too, Horn. And
no, I was never interested in it.
It was me.
Oh, it was you.
Yep.
But then okay, because I thought when I went away, the market went out, and so Beer got screwed. But what happened is, so I asked for more time, and then I never came back to him until after I completed our deal, and I was like, hey, sorry. And I just don't know what the ethics are because that's kind of the same thing that happened to me earlier on. But I decided to pay the extra $5 or whatever it was and take on Torian for Kyrie. And at the time, I was really torn because Collison.
Dude, the extra $5. The difference between Collison and Kyrie is
I know,
like
and this goes to Lusky's point, which is like these buyout guides. It's all silly math, and like how can we legislate because you can totally just sign Torian Prince to a 3-year contract and get out from him for nothing. But it was painful for me to take on whatever I'm going to have to pay next year.
Yeah, you're basically guaranteeing that you've got an uphill battle next year, like no matter what, like a real struggle.
You have, like I said earlier, you have 14 years now. 14 years of
right. That's
in
exactly
the desert.
Exactly, but right, that's right. But he might have lost. He might have made that move and still not won, and still been fucked next year.
Yep.
And that decision, because Collison got hurt, and all of the categories that Kyrie just killed it in, and he got like 10 blocks for me. And if you look, I'm up by like 10 blocks on 4 dudes.
What are the ethics of those in those situations?
I'm pretty sure that's an illegal trade.
Okay, guys, should we just re-rack this year and just completely start over as of tonight? There's like 2 games left.
I think I owed him a courtesy of going back to him before I made the deal and letting him know. I think that was where I apologize, Josh.
I think
it's week. Give me a month of the year.
A month of the year?
Yeah.
February.
All right. Continue talking. I need a minute.
I'll take this time to give you guys a quick WCL status update. So if Willie Cauley-Stein and Monty Morris combine to go like 97 of 97 in the final half of their games today, then I will win the WCL.
Weeg, how many times have you had to talk to Lusky about WCL in 2019?
A handful. I enjoy it.
What do you enjoy about it?
I mean, I'm just a fan of the game, and that's another flavor of the game. And Lusky's got interesting insights always, so I like it.
I just don't know why Lusky thinks that we have any like real advice to give him when we have no context for how the league works.
Lusk, what do
like,
you
what's
think?
going
Lusk,
on.
do you? I feel badly because I always have to ask, like, oh yeah, like, what are the fucking rules again? What are the categories?
It's not. First of all,
I'm totally
it's
underqualified.
It's not that different, and B, is there any? There's zero other people on the planet who you can turn to for this level of advice. Literally, there's zero.
All right, don't go tell us about the rules of the WCL. We've already.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to.
We just fast forward the first 45 minutes of the pod tomorrow, please.
Yeah, the jokers in the ACBL or whatever are not good enough to talk to about the WCL.
Seriously.
So 2004 week was the last year that Scotty B won a UFBL championship, and on February 29th. 2004, which it was a leap year. It was the 76th Academy Awards, and The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King won Best Picture.
Interesting.
Sean Penn and Charlize Theron also won Oscars that night. Week. Who do you think the Lord of the Rings? I almost said Game of Thrones. Who do you think the Lord of the Rings dudes are in UFBL?
No, War of Warcraft. Who played War of Warcraft?
That was the prior one.
You want like Lord of the Rings comps? Lord of the Rings comps?
No. Who in UFBL do you think is into Lord of the Rings? Or like who do you think in UFBL read Lord of the Rings when they were a kid?
That's interesting. Mitch definitely did. Yeah.
Lusky, did you?
Yes.
You read all the Lord of the Rings books?
Yes. And again later when it became popular.
Scott, did you?
Same.
No, I did not.
Yeah, I never got into it.
I have a good Lord of the Rings story. It's kind of long to tell, but I'll compact it.
Peskin's gonna do a masterful. This might be a two-parter, frankly.
When I was a young teenager, I had the Lord of the Rings in like a box set. So there was a box with all 3 books slid in it. And in the middle book is where I kept my.
Okay, wait. This podcast has to be appropriate for all audiences.
This is definitely not appropriate. In the middle book, I kept a 3.5-inch floppy with downloaded pornographic material that I would spend all night like downloading one naked picture of Pam Anderson. I left on vacation to camp or something, and my dad found it. I got home and it was just sitting at the top of the stairs. So I just popped it in, formatted it, and put it back at the top of the stairs, and it sat there for another night and then disappeared. No one spoke of it since.
Does he still listen to the pod?
He does not. I want to bring this up with him so bad and get his reasoning behind how he played that one. But I bet he thought it was weird that it was in the Lord of the Rings book. Alas.
So Bookbinder, of all of the 9 trades that you made, is there one or two of those that that you think turned the corner for you this year?
I think, the blocks race at the end, getting the Miles Turner trade was huge for me. Using the last $4 and Bates, who's going to be the most amazing player in 3 years. Using those chips to get Miles Turner was huge. I really was fighting with Horn to get Kyrie and Turner together with all of my assets. So I think that was huge, and then getting Gobert late.
Scott, how was I as a negotiating counterparty in those negotiations?
I mean, you're fine, Horn. Like we have our good days and we have our bad days. We accomplished a lot though. We made 3 deals together in like a span of 2 weeks.
Yeah, dude. When I look at the Scotty B for 3 roster that's about to win this championship, it's all with my players.
And the other huge trade was when and there were a lot of trades where we all together, like the people in the race, traded for present value. Which I think is important to remind people. The DeRozan Middleton trade. DeRozan shot 53% from the point of our trade on, and Middleton shot 43%. Like that.
Lusky, what did you make of all the deals among competing teams.
I loved that. I mean, my sense, Horn, was that you had orchestrated all that as a means to try and stay relevant at the tail end, but in fact, it wasn't the tail end. And I thought it was fascinating and interesting, and I was kind of jealous to not be a part of it because at that time I was still in the race too. I kind of wanted to drill in. I mean, it sounds like you kind of answered part of my question already because that Miles Turner trade you mentioned, Bookbinder, that was with Horn, right?
Yeah, that was where I really felt like I think I'm going to win this thing. Was that Turner trade?
Interesting.
I second that.
So Horn and I both did similar things. Horn did it first, but we realized that there was no the path for us was minuscule, if existent, and we decided super late in the game to divide up our pieces and get what we could. I'm wondering, other than the Turner trade, did any of those other trades have any bearing on what happened?
Gobert shot 75% from the field for me over the last month.
Killer.
And he blocked 30 shots. And
wow.
You guys, yeah, look at the standings. And Vus was great, but those two categories were a difference maker. So I think it's really interesting how it went down. I'd love for you to talk about our Paul George Durant trade and then what you did with Paul George after that. Because and Horn and I were talking because there were points when I felt really confident about that being okay, and there were points when I was like, oh shit, did I just give Weeg a chance to take this from me? Weeg, what do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah.
Now I'm playing host, Horn. I hope I'm stepping on your toes again.
No, it's great, but you start by talking about our Steph for Durant trade.
Yeah. So, I mean, before I even go there, I just want to echo that the Turner and then Gobert deal were the two things I was hoping did not happen for you, Scott, because I was looking at the exact same thing. And when the Miles Turner thing hit, I'm like, oh great, here we go, because that was your blocks boost, and every which way I ran it, that vaulted you to the top. And then when Gobert came, it was a bit of a nail in the coffin. I was like, oh man, if this just happens the way it's supposed to happen, it's going to be a steep uphill climb for me and Jones. Anyway, so Curry and Durant, I mean, I was looking at the same time, I was looking at the field goal battle and looking at the crazy lead plus projected lead I was going to have in threes. And it seemed like it made a lot of sense to me to flip those and try to basically category chase down that path. But I don't know, Horn, if you want to relay the details of how that trade.
I mean, from my perspective, when you got Steph, I felt like a great injustice had been done, and my entire season was dependent on having Steph because, Amish, I hope you got past all the WCL content because this is important for you. You can't have Ben Simmons and not have Steph Curry or James Harden from the jump. And because I missed on Steph, I was like the only path forward was with him. So when you expressed, like, I floated it as like a joke, not as a joke. I thought like they're both really good. I don't exactly know what Weeg is trying to do, but like Durant's as good as Steph. Like, why can't we do this deal? So I proposed it, and then you were like actually interested, and I was just like floored. I was like, oh man, like it breathed new life into the walks at the time.
Right. And it was important for me at the time too to keep you in the race because I'm looking going, if you're gonna peel off and sell to Jones or whoever, I'm screwed. I was the odd man out for sure.
Right.
So
Scott, what did you think when that deal went down?
Sorry, I'm getting off mute. Yeah, I didn't. I thought it was interesting that there was a current value trade. It didn't really change the game very much to me, but I just thought it was interesting how that came about.
Lusky, why were there current value trades this year?
Because I think there were more people that stuck in the race longer than usual, right? I mean, there were 5 of us that were, all felt like, hey, I'm already caught committed here. Let's stick around. And once you get to a certain point, then the sellers don't have much left to sell. And so I think you did this. I mean, like I said, I was jealous. I was on the outside of all of the present value trades that were going down, but I thought it was wise of those that were involved. And obviously it worked out better for some than for others.
Yeah. What's next on our agenda?
Well, we have the next trade after we got Durant.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Paul
go?
George.
Yeah. This was the other kind of big one.
I knew I was taking a risk giving you the field goal bump, but the way I was looking at how everything would play out is I knew I had to take a chance, and I wasn't gonna make it with just him. So I'm looking at it going, all right, how can I take a chance? I had, in passing, talked to Lusky about his interest in Paul George, and I didn't even know if you were serious at the time, Lusky, of like, he's somebody I would sell for, So.
Oh, really? I don't recall us discussing him prior to you receiving him. What I recall is saying, I think I said to Horn, who had already sold at that point, I said something along the lines of, my goal is to get out of all this with George and Vucevic. And the next thing I knew, Bookbinder had dealt George, and I was like, fuck, this is going to be harder now.
You didn't, it wasn't even that much that you said to me. It was like some weird passing comment like, oh yeah, George would be nice, or I don't know.
No, I think I may have intimated. Yeah, I may have intimated that I thought George, was the best available keeper.
Yeah, so that was it. So I didn't even know if that was real, but I thought, all right, at least there's some potential value in me flipping George. I knew Books wanted the field goal, and really to start, I thought it was a decent categorical move for me, period, to just get George. If George keeps doing what he's doing, I'm down in steals. I need the points to pass Jones, so on. So the fact that there was also a built-in potential flip and red wedding, I said, let's go for it. And then when I turned around and asked you and you were interested, at first I didn't think it was going to pay off, and I was pissed because Gobert went.
But Bookbinder, how do you not get an NTC there?
No, and Horn, do you want to share our conversation after the trade? Because I asked for it, and
you did.
I planned, and I calculated that I wasn't concerned about we getting your guys. Number one, because I didn't think he was my top competitor at the time, but number two, I was chasing you in like 4 categories, and so if you traded Harden and Lillard and those guys, and I caught you in steals, I caught you in points, I almost caught you in assists. You fell back in free throws. So all of that, I felt comfortable just letting him go and taking the percentage help that I would get.
Interesting. Well, that was smart.
Books, but I did ask for it.
You really, this was your finest season in a number of ways. We were talking before you joined that his draft, which in retrospect is not like nobody would give it an A+ in hindsight. But at least at the top, he did what comes naturally to him, which is coupon clipping. And but I think that coupled with a much more aggressive arms race strategy is what got you over the hump. You were making moves. You took on risk. You went a little out of your comfort zone during the arms race. You were like in your comfort zone for the draft, and then stretched a bit during the arms race, and every stretch paid off.
I think that so much of it is also that I had no major injuries this year.
Right.
And Jones, and then week 2 at the end, got crushed. And I also think my guys, reminiscent of Gabe several years ago, if you look at my guys the last month, I didn't have, for the last 3 weeks of the season, I didn't have a field goal percentage day under 48%. Part of it was roster construction, but part of it was just guys were playing out of their minds. So it takes to win this thing, going through all that, you have to have, good draft. You have to good arms race, but you need a ton of luck and shit to go to your way.
Yeah. What was the Scorpion Balls move that you thought was the most impactful?
Well, I'm sure I can think of a late move, but his early move was Peskin. I know it didn't pay off with Covington getting banged up and being out the whole season, but that was a good move, right? Like I have that move penciled in to try to chase Peskin because I knew he'd want to get off that contract. And he got those guys for a long time, right? It was Turner and Covington for basically nothing. Right?
Weeg, you're very good. Weeg, you're very good at
contract.
Weeg, you're very good at targeting the guys who are looking to get off of contracts. You did it with T-Mac on Aaron Gordon. But how come you never came to me on a deal for Taurean Prince?
Yeah, I didn't know that you hated it that much.
Really?
I guess. I don't know. I overlooked it. I thought about that after you dealt it. Like I missed it. It was a mistake.
I was like, when you did the deal with T-Mac and took on Aaron Gordon, I was like, yeah, man, I knew he was trying to get off Aaron Gordon. And like, if I'd only like gotten a little further with T-Mac on these negotiations, like I would have happily taken on that contract for Steph. And so I was like, man, we really crushed it. And then I was like, why aren't you coming to me for Taurean? And you can't, when you're in that situation, you can't go approach people about it because it changes the leverage.
Yeah.
Hey, Weeg.
Yeah.
Next year, if you want Taurean, you can get him for maybe like $23
or 12.
He's already on the dirty list.
There you go.
So I am just a real quick score update. I am 2 steals and 5 rebounds away from second place alone, and I'm not guaranteed not going to happen.
You have anyone going right now?
Buddy Hield, my boy.
Nice. Willie Cauley-Stein and Monty Morris only need to go like 96 of 96 right now.
Could happen.
I'm at last check, I was 1-3. Hold on, I'm double checking. I'm 1-3 behind Kansas City Redhawks to earn a half point in threes, and I've got Gallinari going tonight. Just to let everyone know where the walks stand. Oh, and Okogie is still playing as well.
Can we are we to the point yet, Horn, to start discussing the what's his name?
Terrence Ross's night. We should absolutely discuss it.
The Smoke Top's first inaugural year in the league, as well as the impending Mini Mac.
It seems a little premature, but since you broke the seal, we might as well get into it.
Yeah, I want to get there. I'm excited. I'm like 5 bourbons deep now.
Why are you? Let's go through each one in turn. What about Mitch's season excites you?
So basketball mixture is it was clear to me from day whenever you introduce a new member to the league, I think the at least for me, so I vote in favor of expansion at every turn, right? I want more people invited into our little community, if you will. But I do have concerns that people don't have the same level of fanaticism that is required to kind of stay engaged. And Mitch, I feel like, exceeded every expectation that I had of him. It was clear to me from like day one when he arrived in Austin, for draft weekend, that he had done his homework and he had a plan. And it didn't matter what kind of anybody else thought about the right strategy. He already had it worked out the right way to go about it. And obviously, like, he wasn't, I don't know if his plan was to try to compete this year, but I think what we can all agree on, I hope, is that he had, of the sellers, one of the best years out there. He really made the most. Not only was he relevant early in the year. I mean, he was up in games played early, but his team now has kind of a lot of glimmer on it for future years. What do you guys think?
Yeah, he's got the best. I mean, looking at the teams for next year, he looks the sexiest, at least.
Trae Young looks the best player in the game.
He's got Trae Young. He's got a bunch of.
He's not as good as Juancho Hernan Gomez, Lesky. I have your email where you insulted me for returning down that offer.
Poster board.
Seriously.
And And what do we think of Mini Mac? Weeg, are you excited about the expansion?
I'm thrilled. I second Lusky's thoughts about expanding and bringing in another personality and group member in, but even better that it's Mini Mac. I think I'm very curious to see, like, I think we have this expectation that he'll be some flavor of T Mac, and I want to see how those differ and what he is in terms of his strategy towards the game. So
yeah. And if I may, I mean, the one thing I'll say about, new members. So I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, I think if you look at even going back, I don't know when, the expansion era began, but starting with Gabe and then up to Jones and Weeg and Mitch and now Mini Mac. And I don't know if did I miss anyone in there? I think that the expanded members of the league are just refreshing, right? They come in, they know about some of the idiosyncrasies and the fucked upness that happens in terms of the arms race. Like, I don't know whether they're listening to old Collier pods or if they just hear war stories, but I feel like I'm glad you joined tonight because I've been thinking about this all day. Like, I think you in particular embrace the dynamic of the league and don't try to resist it. And I think some of the historical members of the league, the kind of the quote unquote originals, like Philly, who we lost right over this, they resist just the dynamic and the nature of our league. And I think that the only way for us to survive and be successful and thrive is for people to recognize what this league is. And what that means is that, I think new members coming in, they say to themselves, okay, this league requires you to draft a mix of good veterans as well as sneaky keepers so that I can trade them in the arms race. This league requires that I push my chips in the middle, even if I only have a 10% chance of winning. This league requires me to do things that don't feel natural, right? And I think that some of us who have been in the league for a long time get disgruntled because we don't feel like these unnatural things should have any place in fantasy basketball. But that's who we are. That is who we are at this point, and I think we all just need to accept that, or else we become the keep show.
Yeah, Lusk, give me a month.
May.
Okay. Books, do you agree with all of that?
Yeah, man. I think the expansion has been great. I think Mitch has been a home run, and I'm excited to bring on Mini Mac. I think we all need to get to know him better, and I think he's got everything all the makeup to be a great member of the league. So, for sure.
On May 18th, Arizona Diamondbacks Randy Johnson became the 16th pitcher to throw a perfect game, 2-0 over versus Atlanta.
Okay, we get the point. It had been a long time since I'd won. I think the bigger.
What's your relationship? What's your relationship to Randy Johnson?
I loved Randy Johnson as a pitcher. I think he was kind of a jerk as a person, but he was a lot of fun to watch.
It's Kurt Schilling who's like the right wing nut, right?
Right. Yes.
Lusk, what do you remember? I feel like the last time I thought about Randy Johnson was like sitting in Luke Ravlin's room at SIGEP watching the World Series in whatever year this was. Well, I guess just before this.
We were probably watching this game.
2001, yeah.
2004. Books. Give yourself some credit.
Well, 2001 he was in the World Series.
Yeah.
For the Diamondbacks.
Hey, Bookbinder. Wait, yeah. Can we another way of doing this game?
This is turning into a roast.
Is the last time Bookbinder won a UAFBL championship, he was driving a RAV4 around.
True or false? Yeah, I was 524 Walnut, living with Amish, Brock, Lev, and more. There was a
do those guys listen to the pod?
Peskin and Amish might.
No. Like the guys who are not in the league. Who like
no.
Does Lev listen to the pod?
You see the count of viewers in the pod, and it is somewhere south of 14.
the data that I get from the site that we use is not very high quality.
Yeah, I think this is it pretty much stays in the family except for Weeg's dad, and that's
There's some
too.
there's some others, but it would be I think it would be nice if the other SIGAP non-UFBL people listened. I think they would appreciate it.
It's a true statement.
What's next on the agenda?
We're totally off the agenda at this point.
I feel like we're getting into kind of the state of the UFBL subject. If I don't know if we put a bow on the season.
Yes, Weeg.
Have you discussed LSL?
Oh, Peskin asked me about whether we were going to talk about that tonight. What's there to say?
I don't know. Just maybe some nice parting words.
I think I shared my parting words when it lost the vote. I think it's a neat thing. I think I get that people thought it was disruptive and threw an outcome or two over the last couple of years. I understand why people think that. I think we were all normalizing to it. I think even this year reflected some normalization because of Ayton's contract price, because of the kicker. Trae Young, as we talked about, did not blow up at the time when books needed him to, and you didn't get much for him in the scheme of things. I don't know. I think it works, and I think it's a neat little feature. But if people aren't into it, that's fine. We'll move forward.
You know what else is neat is in 6 years when Amani Bates and Bronny Jr. are both already pro, and we get to draft every rookie at the draft. It's gonna be so sick.
Horn, is part of you really looking forward to drafting rookies?
No, I have no interest. I'm going to actually leave the room every time a rookie is called. That'll be my cue. That'll be my cue to go get a beer.
I have another league question. I was just clicking around on the sheet here, and I stumbled upon the Dynasty Standings tab. Who do you think's up first in Dynasty? Do you know? Does anybody know?
What are the criteria? I know. We had a conversation earlier.
I don't really know. Bookbinder messaged me something about it, but I don't.
This is so dumb. Can we abolish it?
Sure.
It's you, Lusky.
Sure.
I don't know if that's true after tonight, though, right? Bookbinder?
No, it's you. You've got at least a 4 or 5 point lead.
Oh, damn. Nice.
Jones is likely to finish in second place in both current year and Dynasty.
Hey, whoa. 2 steals and a couple boards.
Buddy Hield and a dream. That's all you need.
Lusk, are we going to win this jazz bet tonight?
Good question. I mean, it's at least a push. I was counting on losing one of the 4, and I was cool with that. So imagine if we had parlayed those 4. I know. Next year we got to do some crazy punter stuff on futures. That's the only thing I'm good at.
we crushed those.
Yeah, I mean it's halftime right now, and they're down by 4, but they're also playing with a bunch of idiots, right?
But do the Clippers even have anything to play for? Are the Clippers the 8th seed now, no matter what?
I don't know.
I think they are.
Hey, speaking of punters, can we just put large amounts of money on the Warriors to win every game?
I don't. How many losses do you think they will have in the playoffs?
Total?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 7 total losses in the playoffs.
Books, what do you think?
I think it's a really good line. I might just. That's a tough line. I was going to say over 5 or 6.
You guys should make a bet.
I think 7's good.
All right.
What else haven't we covered, man?
I was just poking through here.
Scott, what do you? I'm really excited.
You're excited for what?
I'd like a video of you telling your children tomorrow about tonight's success.
It'll be in your inbox in the morning.
And what does Barry get out of all this?
Her husband back tomorrow.
Is the money going to be spent on a fancy dinner, a night out on the town?
That's a good idea. I should put a good chunk of it into something like that. Yeah, a night out, a present. That's a good call. I was gonna do the kids. That could be something for them too. But the other thing that I never have been one to like roll over my winnings just because it feels good to like actually.
Don't roll over these winnings.
You can't roll, especially.
No, we accrue interest.
That would be the most bookbinder thing in the history of the league if you rolled over your winnings.
No, I'm not. I'm not a rollover kind of a guy. So
that would be amazing.
I'll treat the wife. That's a good call.
Oh, it's sensible. It'll pay for the next 2 years.
No,
it just makes good sense.
I think the
interest rates are rising. That's a good point.
Oh man,
I'm glad I came on, guys. This has been fun.
Weeg, how have you managed your disappointment over the last 2 weeks?
It's been tough. I won't lie.
Weed, right?
Yeah, I wish it hurt, because it's funny. I always felt like I had the smallest shot out of all of us, but I think because this beautiful story played out in my head of the moves I made and how I got here and the come from behind and my final strong 2 weeks of winning it, like I would lay at night and just imagine these beautiful stories that finish with me on the podium, like holding the title, and that being ripped away from me hurts more. I almost wish I just lost, even though I thought I was going to win. It sucks. I'm grieving still, but I've thrown myself into fall draft prep the last few days to help me.
That's fair. That's a very strong response. I mean, books. You've been through a number of these. Like you have to like build up a couple calluses before you can win one of these things.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's there's 14 guys, and everyone would give an arm and a leg to win. So I've been living for 14 years through it, or 15 years. So keep at it, man. You have all the tools to be a champ in the league. If I can do it, you definitely can.
Hey, Horn, I know we're wrapping up here, but is it too early for us can we just like cast a vote here for our way too early 2020 UAFBL champions?
We can. I'm not sure what value it's going to serve, but we certainly can.
I mean, let's do it.
I like it.
Are we going to wait? I'll only do it if we're actually putting money on it. Only if we're actually betting.
No, we're not putting money on it.
No, let's bet. What
Lusky will put money on. He, even before he turned around and into a seller, he guaranteed with 100% certainty and money behind it that he would not be relegated next year. I think that's an interesting bet. And
Lusky is not going to be relegated next year. I would put money on the Lusky.
Thank you.
What odds?
Come on,
what odds
man.
do I get?
Yeah, dude.
Come on.
No, come on.
That's the most. Hey, bookbinder, I will put any amount of money right now on that.
Give me odds.
Any amount of money.
Wait. What are the odds?
That Lusky's not relegated. They're pretty good, buddy. I'd say give him 5-1.
That's a lot. I'll go 5-1.
I would happily take that. So wait, Lusky's going to put up 50. Lusky's going to put 50 to Bookbinder's 10.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, dude.
The problem is that it changes the incentives of like how you could play the league.
Yeah.
I mean,
our incentive structure is what it is. As
Can I get odds on who finishes higher, Horn or Lusky?
Ooh.
Because you guys are kind of like the same, right?
We're the exact same. We're in the same spot.
Are you?
Horn has more money, right?
Yeah, you got some money.
Horn, do you have any?
Lusky really needs Vucevic and George to like. Those are kind of expensive.
Let us not forget about Blake Griffin, my friend.
Well, you'll trade him to Height for like
$1. $1.
Yeah, you do have cash lead.
So, Lusky, who do you have your money on to win next year?
I asked the question, but I don't necessarily. I mean, I like Smoked Hops's keeper situation the best. He's got 3 guys at a really nice price, and although you know how I feel about John Collins, the bishop, I'm gonna pick Smoked Hops just because I'd like to see some fresh blood. Just in year 2, take it down.
Tonight, John Collins had a 3, 20 points, 25 boards, 6 dimes, a block on 53% from the field.
Yeah, like somebody should offer like an old fashioned Joel Embiid deal for Collins in the offseason. Somebody should let Mitch win the league next year by just giving him all their cash for Collins.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be another kind of a tame, even parity year. I don't think anyone got a huge, windfall, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys in the race next year. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty wide open. I think things got distributed pretty evenly, and there's nobody who's coming in with a clear advantage at this point, which is exciting. Anything else?
Yes. One last thing. All right, and this is not pertinent to everyone in the league, but it is pertinent to the 4 managers that are on this call. What else is happening tonight that is relevant to the league that in particular the splicers are responsible for? We've got the UAFBL Cup, y'all. The Daily Cup.
Oh, that's it. Wait, do we all do that?
Yes, every single person on this call does that.
And who is winning tonight? Who's going to win this season?
We had a daily. I didn't even put in our.
Well, the Hype's going to run away, but what's crazy is that after I had a good night tonight, and I jumped Philly and stand to win $64.
I was in the race too. I forgot to put a lineup in.
I did too. I was there too. God damn it! It's Friday. Where was our reminder on Slack?
Slackbot does not
wait.
know about.
So wait, we can you explain Slackbot to me?
What do you want to explain?
So like when it says Karras for your keeper, where does that come from?
Amisha's brain, I think.
No, I did that.
Oh, nice. I can't believe I forgot to put one in.
I just assumed it was an artificial intelligence.
It is, Oren. It is.
Close enough.
All right, guys. Scotty B, congratulations on your championship. This is very well deserved. I'm very happy for you and happy for the
congrats.
This is great. This is
thanks,
a big
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.